Hello and welcome to this review of Caro-Kann chess opening traps. So let's dive right in here with this first example. This game begins with e4, c6, the Caro-Kann defense. And there are different ways white can play. Often white will just play d4 here to control the center, but sometimes knight to c3 is played. And so normally black's second move is d5. That's why they move c6 to fortify a d5 pawn push in the center. And so knight to f3, capture, recapture, knight to f6, attacking this knight here. And so queen to e2 is played. So this line is a little different than what is normally played in the Caro-Kann. But if black plays this move, it is a mistake here, as now knight to d6 mate is possible. So if we go back here, I'll go back through those moves really quick. So here we see everybody fighting for control of the center, and now this knight is under attack, and the queen is protecting it. Normally white will just capture this knight and double up black's pawns, but as soon as white made this queen to e2 move, black should ask, well, why did he do that? Just to protect this knight, or is there more to it? Which there is in this position. So in the game, black moved his knight on the b square to d7, which was the mistake. So it looks like just capturing this knight would have been better here. But after the mistake, we have a mate. All right, on to another example here. Okay, so now in this game, we have e4, c6, the Caro-Kann defense, and normally white will just play d4 here in the center, taking control with two pawns in the middle, and black will respond with d5, attacking this e4 pawn. And so after capture, now we have c4, this Panov attack, which will instantly attack this d5 pawn and force black to make a decision to defend or capture. So here it is ignored and bishop to f5 is played, just developing a piece. So white captures, queen recaptures, and now the queen will be chased with this knight to c3 attack on the queen. And then after the queen moves to the side here, pinning the knight to the king here, we have queen to b3. So now white is threatening to attack this b7 pawn, and after that, attacking the rook here, possibly capturing this rook. So black has different options here. It looks like the best move would just be knight to d7 and possibly give up this pawn, but instead of knight to d7, we have queen to b6 that was played in this example. So this would allow knight to d5 here, attacking the queen. And what does black do here? If black were to capture, then we have a recapture. And now there are two threats. The threat of the knight going to c7 here and forking, or just moving here and attacking the rook, and this pawn will be pinned. If the knight is captured, the rook will capture. So white would be winning in this position. All right, let's see. Let's go on to another example here. I tried to find examples where black, I did find a few positions where black had some kind of trap, but because the Caro-Kann is more of a defensive opening for black. There were more instances where white was able to set up a trap because white is able to be more on offense and attack, whereas the Caro-Kann is more of a defensive position, and it's harder to find attacking traps for the Caro-Kann. All right, so in this example, e4, c6, d4, d5, capture, and capture. So this is another possible option for white, just capturing in the center and kind of simplifying the game early. But once again, we have this Panov attack. And then knight to f6 here, defending the pawn. And so now we have knight to c3, just piling up more pressure on this d5 pawn. And so the game continues with developing on both sides. Now this queen is attacking the d4 pawn and the b2 pawn here. So what should white do here? Well, a capture in the center, and then now we have an interesting move here. Queen captures on b2, but it looks like a better move would have been to just capture here in the center. Knight takes d4 would have been a better move. White would still be slightly ahead in that position. So after queen captures on b2, we have this protecting the knight, which was under attack by this queen. And so after the knight moves in to put pressure on this a pawn with the queen, and now we have knight to a4 attacking this queen. And so we'll see here that because the black queen went after this b2 pawn, it kind of puts this queen in danger, and the queen is starting to get chased around. So after a capture of the pawn, we have bishop to c4, once again attacking this queen. And here it looks like the best move is knight to c2, giving up this knight, but already white is ahead in this position. And so in the game, bishop to g4 was played. After a block, capture, recapture, the queen tries to run. And once again, the computer wanted knight to c2 here again in this position. But if the queen tries to run, we have another attack here with this rook. And now the best move is just knight to c2 to give up this knight finally, and that allows the queen room to escape here. But in this position, white is winning, especially with this evaluation of over +8 here. All right, on to another example here. Let's see. All right, e4, c6, d4, d5, and now knight to c3. So this is a common continuation in the Caro-Kann, where this e4 pawn is attacked and the knight just defends it. So after capture, recapture, now we have a knight developing here. And the knight develops here to prepare this knight to f6 move. So then if the knight is captured, instead of doubling pawns, this knight can just recapture. But the game continues with knight to g5 here. So an interesting move. This could potentially put pressure on this weak f7 pawn. One example might be e6, and then a bishop to d3 move. And if this knight is if black tries to chase this knight away, then we could have a queen move here, threatening mate in 1. And if it is blocked, there's this possibility. So this is one way that white could win if black doesn't play the best moves. But in the game, after knight to g5, we have knight to f6, And the game continued with bishop to d3, and then e6. So just development on both sides here. And now a sacrifice in the middle here. So if you're not familiar with this game, this was an interesting game where a computer by the name of Deep Blue with the white pieces played against Garry Kasparov, world champion at the time. And Deep Blue went on in this game to defeat Garry Kasparov with this sacrifice of the knight here. And after the queen pins the knight, we have castling and capture of the knight. So if we look at the material right now, white is behind in material. So Garry Kasparov is ahead, but the evaluation is with one move here, which the computer does play. Bishop to g6 is the one move that keeps the computer ahead here. And so this just chases the king. So now the king is stuck in the middle and can no longer castle. And his pieces are uncoordinated and kind of cramped. So the computer Deep Blue continues just developing pieces. This bishop fires up through here next to the king. And now we have a b5 move, which will let this bishop come out, trying to give more room for the black king. And now the computer responds by trying to open up the queen side over here. Kasparov develops his bishop, giving a little more space for his king. And now we have a pin of this pawn against the queen here. So after a knight move, and the bishop was being attacked here, so it retreats. The king tries to move away to the corner to get out of the center here, which the queen was lined up on the king, even though these two knights were in the way and this pawn. Anyway, after this, capture, capture. Now the king is a little more open. And queen to d3 here, threatening this pawn. And now we have the bishop moving, trying to protect this pawn. And now bishop to f5. So attacking this e6 pawn, which is pinned by this rook. And now we have a capture and giving up the queen. So it looked like that was the best option for Kasparov, but now he's behind. And so after some exchanges, the game ended here with c4, which this will open up the position a little bit more in front of the king, possibly allowing the queen or the rook to start attacking up towards the king here. And so Kasparov resigned as he is behind here in this position. All right, so we'll just jump into another example here. Kind of burning up some time, so let's try and make it through the rest of these. Okay, e4, c6, so normal Caro-Kann opening moves that we just saw here. Just white developing his pieces, and now the knight is under attack. So after a capture, we have d3 fortifying c3 fortifying the d4 pawn, and then bishop to f5, just developing by both sides. But this is a little trick to watch out for. When this bishop is developed to f5, trying to get outside of the pawn chain once e6 is played, but now we have a queen bishop battery on this weak f7 square, threatening check, and a possible capture of this b7 pawn. So after a block, the queen captures, and then the knight kind of tries to trap the queen in here, and white just continues to develop. And we see if instead white had played queen to capture c6 with check here, then black could have just played this right here, which would keep the game slightly in black's favor, as the queen would be chased away. And now in the game, knight to b6. After that was played, white instead plays knight to f3, and then f6 here to prevent this knight from jumping up here and trying to help attack this f7 square. If instead knight captures c4, we would have a queen capture with check, and then the knight could be recaptured. So instead, f6 was played, and then bishop to b3. So here, white would just go ahead a pawn. So that's just a little trap to grab a pawn, and white is just ahead by +1 here. All right, on to the next example. Okay, so here we have e4, c6, d4, d5, and e5, the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. And now, often black will play this move to get this bishop outside of the pawn chain so that he can play e6 and not block in his bishop. But here we have h4, and with this move, black must be careful as it sets up a trap on this bishop. If black does not pay attention and just plays e6, well, then we have the possibility of g4, and if the bishop goes here, f3, and now the bishop, the best move according to the computer, it's close. Either give up the bishop for this c2 pawn or retreat back here to g6, and then h5 will be played, trapping this bishop. So another possibility in this position, if we just go back to the beginning, e4, c6, so the advanced variation, and the bishop comes out. Then after h4, it looks like the best move is either to play h6, which is what the computer recommends, or even h5, which prevents this pawn from attacking the bishop. Then it could just be captured. But h6 is what the computer recommends. And then after this g4 pawn push, attack the rook here, f3, and then a retreat here back to h7. And that would leave white, though, slightly ahead. All right, on to the next example. So now we have e4, c6. So here's a different move. d3 is played. So if you're playing someone, a white player who is playing kind of passively and defensively, they just play d3 and fortify their e-pawn. And then the game may proceed with knights developing, capture, and then here is the problem. So if we go back, it looks like white can just capture this pawn for free, but that would be a mistake. So here it recommends bishop to e2 is the best move to get ready to castle. But after this capture, we have the pawn push attacking the c3 knight. So once that knight moves, although in this position, the computer recommends knight capturing on f7, and then the king would have to recapture, just giving that knight up, but black would be ahead. So white retreats, but now we have a fork with a check here. Queen check, and the knight is under attack. So after c3, capture, capture, and the queen captures. And the game may continue with an attack on the queen, but the queen can just retreat back here and pin this knight to the king. And now the knight is attacking this pawn possibly, but the king is still in the middle. Although in this position, it looks like black is ahead by +1 and about a quarter. All right, on to the next one. I'll try and get through these last couple examples here. All right, so normal opening moves, but here we have bishop to d3 to protect this pawn. And now more pressure is placed on that pawn, so the pawn presses forward, attacking the knight, and the knight retreats, and even further pushing forward with e6, giving white an advantage here. So it looks like knight to f6 is the best move, but white is still ahead there. So in the game, capture was played. But if we look at that move real quick, knight to f6, then we would have capture, king captures, and knight to f3, and white would just be ahead here. So in the game, after e6, we have capture, but this is even worse as white is winning now. Queen to h5, block, the only move, and then capture. The queen sacrifices, but after capture, the bishop mates here. So an interesting possibility, and this is a theme that the black side must watch out for, this weakness on this diagonal here. All right, on to the next example, number 9 here. Okay, e4, c6. So once again, normal opening moves, but we have this bishop jumping in here. Capture, bishop captures, and now c5, attacking this central pawn with the queen and the pawn. So the knight just defends that central pawn. And now we have knight to f6 attacking the bishop. So the bishop retreats, and then here it looks like c takes d4 is the best move, and that's what black plays, and a capture here of the knight. And so in this position, the queen captured, but now this is a mistake as bishop to b5 check, and there's a threat, an attack on the queen here. So white would be winning in this position. If the bishop just blocked, the queen would just capture the queen. Whatever black does, he is in trouble here. So it looks like the best move would be not to capture this knight, but play e5, and then the game could have continued with the retreat. And then, this position, black is slightly ahead, or after e5, if knight to f3 is played, if black thinks that he can fork these pieces, well, it doesn't quite work because bishop to b5 check, block, takes, and then the knight has time to move out of the way. All right, on to the next example. Let's see, I have 2 more, so I'll try and squeeze them in. I know this video is running a little bit long. All right, e4, c6. So once again, the first moves of the Caro-Kann, and we have the advanced variation here. So the bishop moves outside of the chain, but this time bishop to d3 is played to fight this bishop. Although this happens a lot, these bishops are traded quite often in the Caro-Kann, but this is a good bishop on the opposite colored squares as white central pawns, where this is a bad bishop that would have been blocked in by these pawns of blacks that are on the same color as the bishop. So this trade, maybe it favors black here, who's able to get rid of his bad bishop and also get rid of white's good bishop. So capture, queen captures. Now it does pull a queen up and develops a piece. So now the pawns are closed up here. The e6 pawn pushes forward, and so we have a closed position in the center. And now an attack here, attacking the base of the pawn chain. So white just defends that pawn, and now we have knight to e7, and here queen to b5 was played, check. And then after this move, blocking, because the queen was also attacking this pawn, it looks like queen to c5 here does not work. So black is winning in this position because we have knight to f5, and then now the queen is under attack, a discovered attack by that bishop. And so the queen can only go here to this square, but we have an attack. And so the queen is just trapped here. And it looks like the computer recommends the best move as queen to a3, where the bishop can just capture the queen. So if we go back, once the king moved here, queen to b5 was not the best move. That we see that got him in trouble. So better would have been to just capture here, I guess, but black was still ahead in this position, as now he is attacking both of these pawns. Or maybe, let me see if that was the best move in that position. So here, no, here it looks like bishop to e3. So that capture of the pawns, I was wondering what would happen if he just captured, but it breaks up your pawns in the center, and after this knight moves here, it would just attack both of them. All right, let's move on to the final example of a Caro-Kann chess opening trap. I tried to find some where black is winning, as most of these traps work for white. So here's one, the final one, where black wins here. So normal opening moves. The pawn was attacked, the e4 pawn, so the knight defends, the pawn is captured, the knight recaptures, and now we have the bishop attacking this knight. So normally, in this position, most often the knight, instead of that queen move, the knight will just retreat to g3 here and attack this bishop, and the bishop will have to retreat back. But in this position, we have queen to f3, protecting the knight and attacking the bishop at the same time. So e6 is played to protect the bishop. And now we have this move here, bishop to e3, which protects the pawn on d4, which is under attack by black's queen. So the knight develops, and then c3 to protect this central pawn. Knight to f6. So now two pieces are attacking this knight here. So the knight retreats, and then we have bishop to e7. Black just develops. And here the best move, the computer recommends bishop to g5 in this position. But white does not sense the danger and decides to castle queenside, which is a mistake. So here, black plays the best move, queen to a5, which not only attacks this unprotected a1 pawn, but hides a more serious threat as well, which white does not notice this threat. So it looks like knight to b1 is the best move here, and we'll see why this knight to b1 is recommended. Because the queen is attacking the c3 pawn here. And so bishop to c4 was played, and this is losing now, instantly losing for white. The bishop to c4 move was to protect this a2 pawn, which was unprotected and the queen's attacking, but it leaves white open for this. A mating pattern that you should learn, because this can be played by white or black in different positions when the opponent has castled queenside. This comes up. So capture, and the bishop swoops down, and we have crisscrossing bishops here leading to checkmate. So there you have one example where the Caro-Kann comes out in black's favor. But because it is such a solid defensive opening for black, most of the attacks seem to be on white's side. So, but black does have a few opportunities like this one to get in a good opening trap. All right, well, this video has gone on kind of long, and if you've hung around for the entire video, I thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.